Welcome to this Lovable 101. This is a series that I do where I provide a beginner's guide to commonly used AI models and tools to give you the really easy insight into how these tools can be used and how they can improve the way that you work. It's a very fast-moving space. This has been recorded on the 21st of February. I know these guys specifically are dropping new features on pretty much a daily basis, so I'll be re-recording this as the product evolves. But who are Lovable and why should you care about them? Well, Lovable is a European-based AI development platform. Launched in Stockholm just in 2023, they've really got going towards the end of 2024, as I'll show you in a minute. What they've developed is an AI-powered development platform. What that means is that it allows non-developers, people that are not familiar or comfortable with writing code, to build web applications, both proof of concepts and demos, but also deploying this out to production. The Lovable name has only been around for a few months. Originally, the team launched as GPT Engineer, and as I'll show you in a minute, it was really with that transition to the rebrand that saw things take off. Early last year, they had their first public launch, and as you can see, nothing, tumbleweeds. A great product, but not quite gathering the passion and excitement from the community. Then they got into the summer. They'd launched some new features, rebuilt it a little bit, had another launch, still tumbleweeds, nothing going on. But it was with that change of name and really focusing in on a certain set of users, the non-technical a product manager or a founder that wanted to create something but didn't know how to write code, that saw things take off. This chart was shared by the founder just around Christmas time, and I know that the numbers have changed significantly since then. But even at that point, the number of paying subscribers was just going through the roof. When Anton, the CEO, posted this, he said they were the first European company to take just 4 weeks to go to 4 million of annual recurring revenue from a standing start. So you can see how they've really captured that product market fit. So what's similar? It's good to understand where Lovable sits in the space so that you can compare it with others. And I really think about companies like Lovable, which is the heart at the top left, Bolt, V0, and Replit are in this easy start, get going, not knowing how to write any code. And I want to build either a proof of concept or a fairly simple production app. I've got an idea for a user interface that I want to bring to life. Then you'll find a separate set of tools, and two of the leading ones in that space at the moment are Windsurf and then Cursor, which is where someone with some development expertise is now wanting to get their hands dirty and get into the code. And often this is where you've got a more complex backend. You might have multiple databases. You might have more complex authentication or billing requirements. And this is where you tend to move into these other tools. At the moment, and I'm sure the companies on the left are not very happy with this situation, you'll find that people will start using a Lovable or a Bolt or a Replit to basically bring their idea to life. And then they get to this point of having more complexity and they're moving over to Windsurf or Cursor. And I'm pretty sure it's a challenge for those on the left to work out what is the product direction that they take. Do they continue to add in more complexity, which will help stop people moving to the right, but then they end up losing what makes them so great today, which is literally start with writing some text. When it comes to using any of these types of tools, whether that's the UI-focused tools or the code-focused tools, I think a little bit about how I learned language when I was at school. And you probably had the same thing where you had different tests that you had to take. So the first one was reading. And if I take the example of French, but it'd be the same for Spanish or German or Japanese, here is some text, can you read it? Well, I found that relatively easy because you could understand what was going on, and you didn't actually have to create anything. It was just about interpreting it. The next most difficult was listening. I'm going to hear someone speak to me, and that was still relatively easy to interpret what was going on and deconstruct. But then you got into speaking, where now you're having to create rather than being on the receiving end. Speaking was a bit more challenging, but still you could bluff your way through it with a few ers and e's. And then the most challenging was writing French, because now you've got to get your grammar, your spelling, the construct of your sentences exactly correct. There's nowhere to hide. And when I think about development, this is exactly the same. It's relatively easy to learn how to read some code or to hear someone talking about what is going on the page, but it becomes a lot more tricky when you want to actually write that code. For code to compile correctly, for a project to run, it has to be correct, otherwise you get all of these errors. And this is where these tools come in, specifically with a tool like Lovable, that almost completely abstracts you from the code. You'll very rarely even see any code unless you click on a couple of extra buttons. This is really about just bringing your vision to life using your words or your typing, and then the system is going to write the code. So how do you access Lovable? Well, you're going to get a license. You can start with a free license, and that's going to give you enough to have a few messages per day just to play around and get a feel for what this thing looks like. But very quickly, you're going to need a paid license. And that's because they're using LLM tokens credits in the background. So you're going to start off with a starter package. That's going to give you 100 monthly messages. And for anyone that is, just playing around with an idea, either for work or for personal use, that's going to be sufficient. Then you're going to move up to the next level, which is launch, and that's going to give you just over double that, 250 monthly messages. And then it just continues to scale up. There's a package called Scale 1, 2, 3, and so on. And here you're looking at $100, $200, and going up incrementally, depending on the amount of capacity that you are consuming. So those are kind of the personal licenses. And then if you are within a company, you can contact Lovable to talk about Teams pricing. And this is going to give you some higher messaging limits. It's going to enable you to get some dedicated support. How do you access it? Well, it's a web app, and we're building web apps, so that makes sense. So you're going to go to lovable.dev, and then you're going to see this screen, and it's such a fantastic first screen because you're just going to start typing in what it is that you want. Now, one thing that I will point out, once you're on a paid plan, you'll notice at the bottom there that there is a public or private toggle. So once you are on a paid plan, then you just want to make sure that you're toggling to private when you're creating a new project, because that is going to define whether other people can see what you're creating. I'm going to go through some tips and tricks. I'm going to show you them firstly just on some slides with some screenshots, because certainly I get feedback that it is helpful to people, instead of seeing a demo and rushing around and not knowing where you're looking, just to talk about the specific topic. And then I will switch over to Lovable, and I'll just show you some of those things within the interface itself. So the first tip and trick that I'll go through is that preparation is everything for any of these tools, whether that's V0, whether that's Cursor. Knowing a little bit about what you want to build and who's going to be using it is going to help you have a much better experience once you get into the tool. The next thing I'm going to show you is about bite-sized building. Again, with anything that you're working with an LLM, being able to tell it step by step what you want to do is going to be much more effective. I'll then show you some of the integrations, which is really a killer feature for Lovable, the simplicity of integrating with things like a database or billing. And then just some general tips around how to recover when things go wrong. So firstly, preparation. Now, one of the easiest things with these tools is that you can just start writing, and that's fantastic, and you're going to start to see something come to life. But if you don't actually know what it is that you're trying to create, you can very quickly become disillusioned, or you head off going in the wrong direction. So for any of these tools, Lovable especially, you should have in your mind what you call a product requirements document, a PRD. What are the goals of this thing that we are trying to build? Who are the people that are going to use it? Are there specific user stories or features or components that we want to see in this? Are there specific screens? And what are the success criteria by which we're going to know whether this product is delivering on that? When it comes to the individual screens, have we determined what types of screens we want? Are we going to need a login? Are we going to need a profile? Are we going to need a billing screen? And for each of those screens, do we know what we want on them? Now, if you don't know, Lovable is going to suggest stuff for you. But if you do know what you want on them, it's much easier to provide Lovable with that context than having to reverse and reconfigure what you've got there. Do you have some specific design assets? So if you are building for your company, then you probably have got some standard stock imagery. You've probably got your standard logos. You've probably got some brand guidelines in terms of the fonts and the colors and the scheme that you need to use. And then you might also have some technical details about how this thing is going to come to life. You might already be wanting to put a front end onto an existing database schema, and so you might have that. You might already have some system that is going to provide authentication. You might already have an understanding of how you're going to bill this thing and the products and pricing. You might have other integrations, or you might have some governance and compliance and security practices that you need to follow. If you have all of this stuff up front, or you can take some time to think through it, then it will really help Lovable to do a much better job for you rather than trying to invent all of this stuff. Once you're in your Lovable project, you're going to be able to manage some of this knowledge. So having created that documentation, here you can just add that in. And I've just given you some example here of what you might put in. Our goals, the personas, the user stories, features, screens, and so on. If you've got that already prepared in a Google Doc, then dropping that into your project is super easy. Next thing I would recommend is that because we're not typing any code, we are really just talking to Lovable as our technical co-founder. Then Whisperflow is a fantastic tool for just talking and then showing what you have said. And I'll show that in the demo in a moment. But whenever you're working with any of these tools, this can be a really fantastic tool, and that gets you away from actually having to type and get your spelling right when you're talking to Lovable. Next tip is around bite-sized building. And this also comes back to having an idea of what it is that you want before you start. A bad prompt is, oh, I've really got an idea of what I want. Okay, build me a Netflix clone, but I want it blue as the main color, and it's integrated with our Salesforce instance, and it's got a mobile app. Well, Lovable is going to have no idea what it is that you want with that. And it is going to end up, as any of these dev tools would, of giving you something that you don't quite want, or it doesn't work, and you're going to have to spend a long time deconstructing it. So much better is to really go step by step. So first off, I want to create a simple hero image with a family watching TV. Next prompt, now I want to add a button to the left that says learn more. Now I want to add a blue gradient to the background with this hex code. And so it's that step by step of building each component, each page, each button. You're going to find you get a really great response from the system. And just last week, Lovable launched a thing called Visual Edits. And I apologize for the shocking colors here, but just to make the point, that up until last week, you would have to be chatting to Lovable to say, change the color to pink, change the font size to whatever you want. Whereas now they've just launched this feature called Visual Edits. And down the bottom of my screen next to Attach, you can see Edit. And when you click on that, you can then go and click on any item on the page, and it will bring up a modal where you can start to change the color, the font, the padding. Makes it really intuitive to change what you're doing in the product, and I'll show you that in a minute as well. Integrations. We are not just building a landing page here. We actually want to build a functional application. And this is one of the areas where Lovable is really striding forwards. So 3 main integrations that you'll find. One is with GitHub. So you can link up to your GitHub repository. That means that everything that you're building in Lovable goes back to a repository, which you can then access in either other development environments like a Cursor or a VS Code if you need to access that later on. But it also means if you've got team licenses that you can start to work on different branches of your project. Next up is Supabase. Supabase is also experiencing hyper growth, just like Lovable and Cursor are over the last few months. Supabase is a fantastic Postgres based database, which is automatically connected into Lovable. And you literally have to click a button, connect to Supabase, and it will then set up all of your tables and all of the required fields and your row level security automatically within that database. So that is super helpful. And the third main one is around billing via Stripe. So this is still slightly in its early days, but it's going to make that a lot easier for you when you actually want to start charging and linking up to your products and prices in Stripe. So that really helps. Over on the right-hand side, there are many other integrations that are either already there or are arriving shortly to add in some AI capabilities and some 3D and visualization aspects. And the next thing that I will show you when we dive into the tool is just recovering when you go wrong. And again, this is not a Lovable specific thing. When you're working with LLMs, there are plenty of situations where it won't quite understand what you're doing and it will take you down a wrong direction. And so how do you recover that? Well, the first, Lovable has a fantastic try to fix button. And I would say 90% of the time when I have a build that goes wrong, click that button and it sorts the problem out. If that doesn't work, then as with all LLMs, they're so eager to please that if you just ask it to fix, the first solution it will come up with, it will often like, right, I'm committed, I'm going to focus on that. But if you ask the LLM to suggest 3 reasons why this might not be working and then to think through which one would be the priority, that really gives it permission to look at it from different angles, and that can often help solve your problem. The third is just to show it a picture. Take a screenshot of what is not happening, the error or the thing that looks incorrect. Drag that into the chat and say, look, this is what I'm seeing. That has a very high success rate. And then the final part, which Lovable is great at, is providing you with checkpoints after each preview is deployed. And you can just go back through that history. If something's gone wrong, go back 2 or 3 steps and then just restore, and you can start work again from that point. So with that, I am going to jump over into Lovable and I will show you what these look like in action. Okay, so here we are in Lovable, and the first thing, because I'm on a paid account, when we set up our new project, we want to make sure that this is private and that it's not showing up on the templates. And to start with, we just want to ask a very simple prompt. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm using Whisper Flow, so I'm just going to talk. Create a blank project with a hero image for a B2B e-commerce store for a global manufacturer of mining equipment. So in goes our first prompt, and Lovable is now spinning up our hero image. Just as we're doing that, I'll point out at the top right, you can see that Supabase integration. You can see that GitHub integration. I'm not going to be showing you that during this little demo, but just to show that is how simple it is to connect up to your Supabase instance. So here we've got Lovable is creating our project. It's now importing Tailwind to provide all of the look and feel. And we can see that it's implementing the features for this first version, a hero section with a powerful image of mining equipment, a clear value proposition, a call to action button, and some professional typography and spacing. And it's using some example colors, but I'm going to show you in a minute how we're going to add in some knowledge, and that is going to update that. Okay, here we go. I've created a modern professional landing page with a clean hero section. If your project requires backend functionality, add Supabase. All right, advanced mining equipment for modern operations, industry-leading manufacturing solutions, explore. Okay, so now I talked about project knowledge. So I'm going to go here, project knowledge, manage knowledge, and I have written a very basic document. It's not as much as I would normally have, but let me copy this in. So here we go. We're building a B2B e-commerce website for a mining machinery business. We've got in here something about our brand colors, a yellow and black, and our brand font. Okay, great. And let's close out that. And I'm now going to attach an image, which I've got. Can you update the background image with this one, and also take a note of your project knowledge to look for the brand colors and fonts? And this is why I love that whisper flow, because it's just so easy to just talk to it rather than typing. So now we're going to update the background image and add the brand colors and fonts. From your custom instructions, I can see that your brand colors are yellow and black, and the brand font is Inter, which we're already using. So that's great. All right, so there goes the image. Now, I mentioned the visual edit. So let's click visual edit. And now we want to click the button here. And here we actually want to change the color to this yellow. Lovely. And maybe we want to change the font size as well. We can actually go, okay, actually, I want it like that. Perfect. So we can really play around. And do I want the font weight? I want it a little extra bold there. Perfect. And actually, I want the font here to be a little bit darker. So you can see how easy that is to do the visual changes there. So that is saved there. So now we've got our page here. I now want to start to add in some product categories down at the bottom. Now below the hero image, I would like to have a series of product category components. These should be called mining technologies, drilling solutions, electrification, and then a final one, loading and hauling. Please can you create these with some suggested images and a call to action button? Okay. And this is where having that product requirements document where you've already in your mind had to think through what it is that you're trying to create is going to help you from going down some random path. But it's a fine line. What I definitely find is that often it's by playing around like this is when you start to bring the thing to life. And it's only by seeing what you're seeing that you go, okay, maybe I would change that around. So, okay, our solutions, advanced automation. Okay. All right. Well, these are not great images, but I would change that around. Let's have it that as I hover over each of these product categories, I'd like it to open up to show a description of the category with some bullet points that explain what that product does and how I can find out more information. And so away it goes. Okay, so just let that reload. Let me just refresh this just to double check. Okay, we're going down. Okay, right, I can see what it's trying to do. So recovering from an error. So now we've got an error. So I'm just going to take a screenshot of that. And I'm going to copy that, drag it in here. When I hover over one of the product category cards, the new bullet points go underneath the Learn More call to action button, as you can see in this image. How do you suggest we fix that? So that's showing it what you can see is super helpful. I'll fix the layout issue by adjusting the positioning of the bullet points and the button so they don't overlap. I'll modify the product category component to ensure proper spacing and layout. And this will be the last iteration that I show in this, but hopefully that's given you an idea. Okay, now the bullet points are in place. Okay, fixed. So there we go. If that wasn't fixed and I wasn't happy with it, then this is where I could go back to restore a previous version. And I can also see the entire history there, so I can always come back. So with that, let's just dive back into our slide deck and we'll wrap up this Lovable 101 session, recovering when you go wrong. So privacy and governance, very important if you're building something for your company. So if you're on a free or launch or scale, the default is for Lovable to train. This is what's in their terms and conditions. Your use of our platform contributes to the continuous improvement. We analyze generated codes, prompts, and usage patterns to enhance our AI systems. And you should definitely dive into their privacy and terms and conditions to understand what that means in terms of what is passed on to their third-party LLM providers. If you're on a Teams or enterprise license, then it says we explicitly waive our right to use their data for training purposes. Custom data handling agreements are available. No sharing with third parties occurs without explicit consent. So once you move past the I'm playing around and this seems quite fun to the actually we're going to use this to build stuff for our company, definitely would think about those Teams and enterprise licenses. So my final thoughts, wrapping up, what is it that I consider when I look at a tool like Lovable? These tools and models are getting better on a daily basis. They're getting better, they're getting cheaper, as in the underlying LLMs are getting cheaper. And as you've seen there, they are getting easier to use. So I recommend that you are trying all of these tools for all of your problems because it's only through trying multiple tools and models that you'll figure out what is going to solve the problem or the opportunity you have in front of you. Always be evaluating team or enterprise licenses as you move this into corporate use cases. It's going to provide you with additional governance, the ability to share things, the ability to have single sign-on, not necessarily in Lovable, but in these kind of tools. And then finally, I always recommend you should be having a set of your most challenging problems for your company, for your employees, for your customers, for your investors, for your suppliers. And you should be putting those challenges towards these tools and models on a continual basis, because whilst today that challenging problem may be out of reach, very soon it's going to become within reach. And if you in your industry are the first company to solve that challenge, you're going to see yourself leapfrog competitors. So where do you get more information? Lovable.dev is the website. So you can go and find their docs where you can get details about the different messaging limits and the different license types and costs. The terms of service and also the privacy details you're going to find on the website as well. With that, get involved, play around, use it. It's such an easy tool. And with the Whisper Flow, where you're literally just talking to a code developer, I think you're going to have an amazing experience. Enjoy.